Rainy days like this one today bring me back to the past. They bring me back to my childhood, back to weekends where it was too rainy, too wet to go outside, so we stayed inside and had fun in different ways. That's right, video games. We had fun playing video games all weekend long, sitting in front of the TV, sitting in front of the Game Boy. Playing N64 was one of my highlights as a child. Back in the day, probably like 1999 to 2001, the N64 was in its heyday. I was super excited to get it when it first came out in 1997. I think I got it for Christmas. And it's just an exciting console. It's fun, it's colorful, it has a lot of great characters in the N64 library of games. A lot of great character-driven games. There's Conker, Banjo and Kazooie, Donkey Kong Crew, got Mario 64. One thing that stands out most of all to me when I look back on the Nintendo 64 library is character. Colorful characters, vibrant graphics, detailed and interesting character designs, and quirky voices, because this was one of the first generations where every character had a little voice clip. You saw that on the PlayStation, you saw that on the Super Nintendo to a smaller extent, as well as on Genesis. But on the N64, it seemed like the characters talked more. Characters like in Super Mario 64, the Banjo-Kazooie games, Jet Force Gemini, all that good stuff. And no other developer did this better than anyone else, except for maybe Nintendo, and that developer is Rare. Rare made some of the most iconic games on the N64, not just with great character, great graphics, and style, but there's just something about the Rareware games that makes it like the peak of those 3D platformer collectathon games. And with today's game review, we've got Super Kiwi 64 for the Nintendo Switch, also on Steam and PC. We're playing it on the Nintendo Switch right now today. Now this is a game that emulates the style of the classic Rareware and other developers' games on the N64 era, specifically N64, collectathon type games. Now this is a game that can be enjoyed by anyone. It's rated E for everyone. It features a level selection where you can choose any level that you want to from the very beginning of the game. You don't have to collect everything. There's no set time limit. There's goals, there's objectives, but it's very loose, very open, and it's really nice and accessible to anyone. As we'll see in this review, this game is a great game. It has one major flaw, and that is that it's a little too short. So let's jump into today's review of Super Kiwi 64 right here on Happy Beard Games.
Happy Beard Games, your source for classic gaming goodness.
Alright, Super Kiwi 64, let's jump into what this game is specifically. Now you're looking at this game, you're going through the eShop. If you're like me, you might have played one of the developers' games or seen one of the developers' games before, because I played one of their previous games, which was MacBat 64. Super Kiwi 64, you're going through the eShop, you find a $2.99 game, you don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I took a plunge with this one. I took a plunge with MacBat 64 beforehand, so I had an idea what I was getting into. But not everything that I expected this game to be was in the game that I actually played. So I bought the game as soon as it released, which was just last week. First thing you see, a title screen. Super Kiwi 64. And it's like doing that thing that N64 games, pans around the level in a three-dimensional scape. Looks really nice. The graphics, you can tell the level design is not only inspired by N64, but it's almost like it's running on like the same tools or graphics technology as an N64. It's not perfect. It doesn't have the same quality control, I would say, as like a Rareware game or a Nintendo Super Mario 64 type game. But that's understandable. There is some things that are vague or a little bit confusing, and there's some things that are a little misleading. Not intentionally misleading, but we'll get to that in a bit. But there's a lot of things that are just small little details that make it look like an N64 game, make it feel like it's running on an N64. And aside from a higher resolution than most N64 games, like significantly higher resolution, and much cleaner visuals, this game looks like an N64 game. It would be cool if there was like a CRT filter in this. That would be cool, because there isn't. But aside from that, it doesn't look like an N64 game naturally, but it looks like an upscaled N64 game, so that's cool. It has a really nice aesthetic and vibe to it. You start out, you come out of a pipe, you're in this like kind of industrial pipe zone, which is reminiscent of Super Mario games. Not so much looking like Super Mario 64, maybe the underground of the castle in that game, but it just looks like a dim sewer, industrial, rusty pipe area. And each of these pipes has a level in them. So in a way that Mario 64 had the paintings, this is like a much more condensed version where it's all just one big room with different warps like the paintings in Mario 64, but they're pipes in this one, which almost makes it seem more Mario than Mario. So yeah, you've got these pipes. You got 2 for each world. There's multiple worlds, and in each world there is set things to collect. There's not a lot of collectathon in this game. It's nowhere near Donkey Kong 64's collectathon. There's one character you play as, it's just the Kiwi, so it's just, you only have one Kiwi character. You don't learn any new moves, you don't learn any new abilities. You do get one new ability at the very end of the game on the very last level only, but it's mainly just a speed increase. So this game focuses on freedom of exploration, and the freedom to collect what you want, when you want, wherever you're going on the game. So from the main menu, the hub world, you can choose any of the levels in the game to start with, but I personally went in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, just kept going up that way. Just did them in order. Made more sense to me that way. And plus that way, I felt like, and this is true, that might be easier if I start with level 1 versus level 6, you know? So it actually was easier to start the game in the forest jungle levels versus the pirate ship levels at the end of the game. Now this game, when you're in the levels, each level has 6 gems to collect. That equals 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48. There's 48 different things in this game to collect. These are your main things to collect. They're just gems, purple gems. They kind of look like something from a banjo game once again. And in all the 8 levels, you've got 6 to collect. So keep an eye on that. Keep that in mind as you're playing. Each level has a tracker for coins, or coins. They're not exactly coins like in Mario, but they're similar to the same thing. Once you collect all the coins in that level, you unlock one of the gems that you have to go find and pick up in that level. So that's how you get one in every level. Now, unlike Mario 64, this game does something good, which is you don't exit the level when you get your gem. It's not like a star in Mario. You don't have to leave the level. So that's cool. You can do it all in one pass. As long as you keep trying to find it, you can do it all in one pass. Or you can leave the level. It'll save your progress. You can go back in and get it again. If you do leave the level and go back in to try to get it again, you'll have to collect the coins again if you haven't done that yet. It doesn't save your coin progress as far as I've seen. Now there's also big coins. The big coins, once you collect all of them in that level, they will unlock a gem as well. So there's the little coins that are tracked on the side of the screen, and there's also big coins. Each level has these, and each level will unlock 2 of the gems, 1 for each, 1 for little coins, 1 for big coins. Now each level has other objectives to get the other coins. Some of the coins are hidden, some of the coins are done through puzzle solving, which is really light puzzle solving. One of them is like you just hit a few different target boards, or on the very last level, you have to use your enhanced boost to go through a set amount of, what are they called? Slalom rings on like a jet ski course over the water to get the last gem in the game. Controls. Now this is interesting because throughout this game, I didn't play it with this. This is the Nintendo Switch N64 controller, which was gratefully given to me by my good buddy Brian. This is actually very much playable with this game. You can use this controller and you should be able to have a good time with this game. Now, I would still recommend using the Pro controller or maybe the Joy-Cons if you're playing in handheld mode. I haven't really tried this one out too much, but it should be completely playable with Super Kiwi 64. So that's really cool that you can use an N64 controller on the Switch and have it work. Back to controls. Now there's multiple different things you can do in this game. Your character has lots of abilities. You can jump, you can double jump to glide. You can also do like a fast speed run, and you can also use that fast speed button to make yourself glide faster if you're gliding. One of the things that interested me and intrigued me the most about this game was the main mechanic of the game, which isn't really used too much. It is the beak. The Kiwi has a beak. You can shab that beak into a wall, you'll get stuck in the wall, and then you'll jump back up and up. This is a feature that was used prominently as one of the suits and one of the power-ups in the game Super Mario Odyssey, which also was recently released, not too long ago, but a while ago, on Nintendo Switch. So they're borrowing from Super Mario Odyssey with the main mechanic. It's not as fluid as it is in Mario Odyssey, but it works easier. It's easier to control than it was in Odyssey. In Odyssey, you would peck in the wall, it would be like a spring, and then you'd have to bounce up. This is not like that. This is just you jump in the wall, you jump up, up, up. And you can use it as many times as you want on repeat, so you can kind of scale a level pretty much endlessly like that. And most of the surfaces in the game are easy to attach to. You can also use that pecking move as an attack for the few amount of enemies that are in the game. There isn't really that many enemies in this game. One important thing about controls. This is really weird. This kind of baffled me when I first played it, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. There's going to be bugs in this game. No, it's not that bad. The control with the camera on the right thumbstick is really bad at first. You press start, you go to the menu. Luckily, they have a sensitivity option, so you can adjust it. You're going to want to put it to 1 to have it feel like a normal game should. It's set at like 0 by default, which makes the camera movement extremely slow. It's weird. It's like unusually slow, and I was like, what? But yeah, so you go change that. You can go up to 1. That should feel normal for most people. You might want to go to 2. I think there's a few more settings that can go like light speed, and the camera goes weird, which I don't know why you'd want it that sensitive, but it's there. So there is, luckily, sensitivity controls for the camera stick. There's not a whole lot of other options, though. But that's okay. That's okay. Another weird thing about the controls is the D-pad. You can't use the D-pad to run around, but unlike most N64 games that only use the thumbstick, and the D-pad just does nothing for some reason on those N64 games, on this one the D-pad allows you to like scoot. You can kind of scoot around. I don't know if there's any other further purpose for it or meaning behind it, but you can scoot around your character with the D-pad. I didn't use it for any gameplay, but it was fun to look at and play around with. Alright, so I mentioned the levels before. You've got different worlds. You've got 2 levels for each world. The first world is a jungle/forest area. The second world is a desert area with some robotics, architecture and stuff like that. There's even a level where you raise lava to get to certain parts of the level, which is cool. There's also a kind of like a temple/sci-fi temple. It's really weird. It almost looks like a Mayan or Aztec type vibe, but it's got like a black light on it and a lot of neon colors. It's really interesting and creepy. It kind of reminds me of like a shadow temple from Ocarina of Time, stuff like that. It's really creepy and kind of bizarre. There's these fetuses. Yeah, this is weird. There's fetuses in the game about Kiwi animals collecting fruit and stuff like that. But there's like fetuses in these bubbles, and you hit the fetuses and it's a switch, like those switch bubbles on Link to the Past. It's really weird. They open doors, and eventually there'll be like multiple fetus things in the level, like the second level for the Aztec, Mayan, whatever you want to call the temple levels. That one has all these like fetus thingies, and I'm like, why? What is the story behind this? Apparently, this game has a predecessor called Beanie. And then Beanie, another game by the same developer, which is a 2D game. It's not like an N64 game from what I've seen. That game ties in directly to the story of this. So there might be some, background knowledge that you might want before playing this, but because there's no story, there's no text in this game for the most part. It's just interesting to like go from jungle, desert, creepy temple, and then you go back to like pirate world. It's just really weird and bizarre. And some people might think it's scary, but it's nothing too offensive. There's no like blood and gore. There is skeletons. There's bones. You can find skeleton people hidden around those areas. At first I thought they were a secret, but it turns out they're just there in specific places of the level. So that's cool. There is a secret hidden in each level. This coincides and goes with the very end of the game. Now, once you beat the game, you'll have 48 tokens. There's actually a couple more gems. But if you want to beat it fully, like I did, just get 48 gems, you beat the game, pretty much. That's what I'd say, at least. A little bit before that, you can actually see the credits of the game by jumping in the plane with the dog in the level hub, and that will take you to the credits screen. That's all it is. It's not a mini game. You don't get to fly the plane, necessarily, but it's the credits. So that was a little disappointing. I was like, oh, it's over. Either it would take me to another world, or there'd be like a race level with a plane, but there's not. It's just the end of the game, which is understandable that it's just like a $3 game made by one person pretty much. But it did leave me wanting a lot more, because it's so much fun. This is where the game's a little bit misleading. I mentioned there's a little misleading, but it's not intentional. So what I meant by that was that this game doesn't really have that Rareware style conversations that the characters have. There isn't really any characters in this game. There's a dog and a plane that he's a character and he can talk to you, but he's the only guy that ever talks to you in the entire game as far as I remember. Super Kiwi 64's Kiwi character does not talk in this game, so there's none of that like wah 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 Banjo-Kazooie talking to each other. There's none of that in this game. There is a little bit of text, a very little bit of text, and in comparison to MacBat 64, which is by the same developer and is a very similar game and style, MacBat 64 has all that. So when I bought MacBat 64 and played through all that, that was cool, and then I expected that to be carried over and then expanded upon with this newer game, Super Kiwi 64. But it doesn't. It doesn't have that Rareware style talking. You know, they do it in not just Banjo-Kazooie, but they did it in Conquer, and I believe they did it in Jet Force Gemini as well. The way the characters talk and interact really adds some character and story to those games, but it's absent in this game. Now, every level has a secret in it, hidden throughout the level. Somewhere there'll be something on the wall with these symbols, like triangles with a line through it, different symbols like an ankh or something. And in this pattern, what you're going to want to do is take a snapshot or screenshot with your Switch controller. Luckily, it has that button right on there. You hit the button, you'll be in your gallery, so you'll check your album later on. Because you're going to need those, you're going to want to find them in the levels, and then you're going to need those for later once you beat the game. So once you've beaten the game, you've got all 48 gems, you go into the last area, which looks like a temple in the jungle. And when you go up there, there's the last gem, 49. There's actually one more. So there's also these buttons on this temple, these like buttons that you can press in. If you press them in the correct orders to enter a code, which are those codes that you've been screenshotting the whole game, hopefully, then you can get a cheat code, and it'll activate instantly. You don't have the ability to do a list and toggle them out. You don't have that. They just go instantly on your character. Some of them do weird things like make it first person or make you big. Some of them change your character icon to different things, like the fetus ball or the dog with the plane and other things. One of them activates a secret area, which will give you the last number 50 of the gems, which is cool. I couldn't figure that one out at first, but I did find that one. So there is a total of 50 gems, and at first I wasn't sure how many there were, because I had 48, and then I had the 49 from the cheat code area, and I was like, well, where's 50? Is there 49? That's a really obscure, odd number to leave it on. But there is a 50, so keep that in mind. There's a total of 50 gems in this game. In terms of enemies, there's not a lot of fighting to be done in Super Kiwi 64. There are these robots, these automatons that walk around. You can hit them once, they'll start to break. You hit them another time, they'll start to break even more, and then you hit them once to destroy them. They can hurt you if they touch you. Your health is indicated with the kiwi fruit, not the kiwi bird, the kiwi fruit, which is cute how they did that connection, up in the corner. I never once got a game over or died in this because you don't take falling damage. You do take damage from, I think, the lava, but it also resets you, so it's not like Mario where you're hopping around the lava when you get hit. It just resets you back to where you were. But the enemies are slow. They're not a problem at all. You don't even have to kill them to get anything. I think they're all just there. They're kind of neutral. They're not really even enemies. You can kill them and they can hurt you, but they're not like going out of their way to chase you or anything like that. They don't shoot you. They don't ram into you. They don't have weapons. So you can just leave them alone, really. Alright, let's wrap this up. Overall, Super Kiwi 64 is an awesome game, a throwback to the 90s platformer collectathons on the N64. It has that classic N64 style, although it does look like an N64 game run through an emulator because it's higher resolution, much sharper, cleaner, not jaggy, not fuzzy. You know what it looks like. It looks great. There are some quirks, like the camera will clip through the walls a lot, which sometimes you can use that to your advantage and see where hidden things might be throughout the level, which is kind of neat. But that's the only real problem with this game in terms of technical or bugs, is you can kind of see through the world a lot. The game itself is a lot of fun. There's a lot of collecting, but not too much collecting. For its size, it's the appropriate amount of collecting, I'd say. It's nowhere near the high end, which is Donkey Kong 64, and it's still even lesser than a Banjo-Kazooie game. This game will take you about an hour to an hour and a half. It took me about an hour, a little bit more because I was messing around with the camera and recording the game for you guys to see. This game has multiple worlds, different levels for each world. And here's something I didn't mention yet, but it has a good soundtrack. The music for the jungle stage is memorable. Not quite as memorable as the classic Rare music by Grant Kirkhope or David Wise, you know, the stuff from the Donkey Kong games. But it is pretty good. Especially, I'd say the highlight music in this game is on the Pirates themed level, which is like a beach/piratey level at the very end of the game, the last two levels. It has really good music. It's a little loud, but it is really good, and it's memorable. It's still stuck in my head as I'm doing this review. The horns and trumpets from the last level of the game, it's great. Collecting is the main theme of the game. The focus of the game is just collecting and exploring freely. You have your abilities that are all set from the start. You don't get anything new throughout the game, except for at the end you get a faster speed boost. But throughout the game, it's just your set abilities. You don't unlock things, you don't equip things, you don't pick up items. It's just your abilities that you have, and you need to learn them freely, explore freely, and collect things as you want in this game. Which is perfect for the Switch, because, you know, you could be playing it on the go, you could just get a few gems here and there, play it later. You don't have to do it all in one sitting like I did in an hour. You could take like a week to play this game, a little bit here and there at a time. It's a lot of fun. Alright, to wrap things up right here in Happy Beard Games, Super Kiwi 64 is a game I'd highly recommend to fans of 90s collectathon games on the N64. If you like Rare, you'll like Super Kiwi 64. If you like Super Mario 64, you'll like Super Kiwi 64. If you liked games on the PlayStation 1 like Pac-Man World, it's not quite the same visually as the PlayStation 1 games, but if you like Pac-Man World, you like Ape Escape, you like Crash Bandicoot, those kind of things, Spyro the Dragon more, you would also like these too. Even if you didn't grow up with the N64, you grew up with the PlayStation, you would still enjoy this, because I grew up with both. I understand both sides of the story. But, yeah, Super Kiwi 64, a lot of fun. I don't know if people of this current generation will understand it, because it's like, well, why does this game have bad graphics? They're not bad graphics, they're intentional graphics to bring you back to the past, that nostalgia factor, make it feel like an N64 game. And it's really cool because it's not just like, a lot of these indie games do like NES style games, Super Nintendo style games. They look like those. Which is just 2D games all the time. They look like Super Nintendo or Genesis games. There's not a lot of indie developers that do N64 style graphic games specifically, but this one is, and this one succeeds too. So with that, this game is great. I highly recommend it. The only disappointing thing, the only downside is that it's short, and that makes sense because it's $2.99. But it does leave you wanting more, so it's kind of weird. It's like, okay, well, I'll pay you more. I'll pay you like $30 if you make a bigger game, but it doesn't exist, so this is what we have. This is what we're stuck with. It's fun, it's fast, it's short, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. Super Kiwi 64 for the Nintendo Switch is an awesome game. Check it out today. You won't be disappointed. Alright everybody, that's it for today's Happy Beard Games review. We checked out Super Kiwi 64 on the Nintendo Switch. Please be sure, if you like this video, to leave me a like, a comment, share with your friends, subscribe today for more classic gaming goodness. You can donate on my Ko-fi page and check that out for some bonuses. Alright everybody, thanks for watching once again. Stay tuned for more. Bye! Now I'm pretty excited about this one today, and it's pretty interesting because I don't get to talk about N64 too much on my channel. I usually focus on Famicom, Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, all that stuff, but before the N64. So I don't usually go up as far as N64, but also today is not really an N64 game. I want to make that clear. This is not a port of an N64 game. This is not a virtual console type re-release. This is a completely new game, designed to emulate the style and feel and look of a classic Nintendo 64 video game. But, just real briefly, because I would love the N64 and I want to talk about it some more, I just don't do it very much, This is for Switch, so we're going way up there past what I usually play. I've never done a Switch review. But this game emulates the style, the designs and characters, the vibrant art, the low-res polygonal design of the graphics, and the look and the way it plays and everything is just like an N64 game, like Banjo-Kazooie, or Donkey Kong 64. Or even one of my favorites on there, Diddy Kong Racing, although this doesn't really have racing elements to it. There's a little bit. Or games like Jet Force Gemini. Now, it's not fair to say that Rare was the only developer doing these types of games on the N64. There were similar games to it on the PlayStation 1, but there's also a lot of developers doing these type of collectathons, these 3D adventure games with platforming, right here on the N64. Aside from Nintendo, we're not talking about Nintendo today. There's also Chameleon Twist, which I thought was a lot of fun. This is by Sunsoft. And then there's Glover, which is a really cool one too, for the N64, and that one's by Hasbro. And not only N64, because this is not really an N64 game, it's a recently re-released... there's like a floater. I don't know, weird. There's like a piece of dust floating in front of the lens. Okay,